Hi, this is Becky Nunn with Nunn Design, and I am excited to show you how you can use epoxy clay, transfer sheets, and a UV resin over the top to create great pieces like you're seeing right here. What you'll need for this video is you'll need to have some epoxy clay. I have equal sized balls, and I've already followed the manufacturer's instructions and have mixed the equal sized balls together to have a blended clay. You'll also need a UV lamp, gel de soleil, which is a UV, a couple of bezels, a dish of water, a transfer sheet, some toothpicks, and I have a couple head pins. I have a 13/16 punch, a paper towel, and then off screen I have a wet wipe, and possibly I'll need some scissors. Go ahead and pinch off a small ball of your clay. I like to have a nice round surface, and the reason being is that it prevents from all kinds of little cracks and crevices when I start to press it down into the piece, so I have a nice smooth surface. Let me show you. Now I have a nice round ball and I'm pressing it down inside of our large pendant circle. On this part, I'm making sure that I have just slightly, that was actually a great pinch, I have a perfect amount. Sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes you might have too much, sometimes you might have too little, and if that's the case, you can pinch off some excess, but I so happen to have on this example a perfect amount. And I'm wanting to be slightly underneath that lip right there. And I'm wanting also to make sure that that clay is pressed all the way up right next to that side so there's not any gap between the bezel and the clay. That one's done. I have a nice flat surface. Let's go ahead and see how we do on this next one. Sorry guys, I also have a perfect fit, but if you can imagine I had too much, I just could pinch some off and just keep on patting it down to make sure that it's nice and smooth. I'm pressing it over and having it go right up to that edge right there. And the reason why I'm being so careful about making sure I have a direct contact between the clay and the bezel is because the UV resin has to be completely exposed to the UV light in order for the whole piece to cure. So if I have any UV resin slipping down into that side area, the piece won't all be exposed and therefore it will not cure. So just go ahead and make sure that you are nice and flush to those edges. I have that handy wet wipe and I'm wiping away that excess. I might have also got some on my fingers, and that is also transferring onto the bezel. And epoxy clay, when it hardens, it's like cement. So you want to make sure that you take time and clean up your pieces as you go to make sure there isn't any excess clay and residue on the piece. We won't need this guy because we had just the right amount of clay. And now we're ready to do the next step. The next step is using the transfer sheet, and we're going to apply it over to the top of the surface of the epoxy clay that is inside of the bezel. Transfer sheets are a film. It's printed on the front side, and on the back side is a paper backing. And how we release that film from the paper backing is by submerging it into water. With the punch, I like to turn this upside down so that I have a little viewfinder and I can see the design inside of that little viewfinder, and I can find just the right area that I want to punch. If I can't quite get to it, I can use my scissors to trim away some of the excess. I'm going to go ahead and use this one down here. I'm not trimming away too much of the excess because I want to be able to hold it while I insert it into the viewfinder. I like that right there. See that word Paris right there? And then I have a little bit of the Eiffel Tower in there too. So once I have my composition of how I like and how it looks, you're going to want to press down slightly, and then I like to hold it with my finger to kind of make sure that it stays in that position while I punch down. And now I have a circular image that's going to fit nicely into my bezel over that clay. Next, we're going to go ahead and drop that transfer sheet in a little dish of warm water. It'll curl up like a little potato chip. See how it's curling up like that? And you're going to keep it fully submerged for 30 to 60 seconds. We'll take a look at it after 30 seconds to see how that sheet is releasing from the back. I have my paper towel all ready to go, and I'm going to be using this to dry off the surface and also to dry off my fingers. After 30 seconds, you can pick up your piece and see how that is sliding off of the paper back. We're ready to go. I'm going to keep that paper back in position because there's an adhesive on the back of that film that we're going to want to make sure stays nice and sticky. I'm just putting that down on the paper towel, wiping my fingers dry, and now we're ready to slide that film off of the back and onto our clay. Sweet! See how easy that was? One of the things I forgot to tell you in the setup is you need a Q-tip. And voila, I have a Q-tip. My clay underneath this piece is still slightly moist. And typically what I like to put it on while it's still moist because I can get it to form very nicely. I can get the transfer sheet to form very nicely right onto that clay, and I still can squish that clay around a little bit if it's not nice and even. You also can take a toothpick and make sure that you have a nice edge. And now we're ready to pour the gel de soleil over the top. The large pendant circles have a bail that comes down like such, so it doesn't completely lie flat, and that's going to be important when you're curing the piece. So you want to find something that you can put underneath there, whether it be a quarter or a nickel or some sort of height that is bringing up that edge. Also, you might want to place all of this onto a business card like such, so it's super easy to transfer that into the UV lamp without touching it and potentially spilling any of the UV resin. I've already popped the top off of the gel de soleil bottle. I find it's much easier. It's super hard to squeeze these little guys, and I tend to have more air bubbles when that happens. So I pop the top, and I'm ready to pour a little bit of the gel de soleil onto the epoxy clay with the transfer sheet over the top. When working with any type of resin, you'll want to underpour. It's always easier to add than it is to clean up. So gel de soleil, very similar to a two-part resin, is self-doming. It just wants to know where that side edge is. So I'm bringing the gel de soleil over to the side and introducing it to the edge. There's your edge. That's where you're going to want to go. This would be a good time to make sure that you don't have any kind of air bubbles inside of there, And by using this toothpick to go along those side edges and move the resin around, you would be releasing any type of air bubble if there was any in there. If you wanted your piece to have yet even a higher dome than what we have here, once you've told it where the edges are, you've told the gel de soleil that was where your edge is, you can go ahead and apply even more resin to give it a higher dome. And I'm checking to see, did it flow out to all the sides? It looks like I could use a little more over here. If by chance you did have some sort of overfill and you had some spillage, you can use a Q-tip to go in and clean up that excess resin off of the sides. All right, we're ready to go here. So I'm going to pick up the card and place it into the lamp. And now I have 20 minutes until my piece is cured. This is the final piece that we talked about in the beginning, and this is what our pieces will look like once they come out of the UV lamp. There's some other samples within this piece that are using also gel de soleil and epoxy clay. This, I put black epoxy clay down into the base and then squeezed an embellishment in and poured the resin over the top. This piece as well. This, I have some gel de soleil in the base of it over some paper, and then poured a little bit in, cured it, and then put the fleur-de-lis on the top. The reason I did this is that if I had just dropped that fleur-de-lis onto the paper and poured the resin in, there's a really good chance that that gel de soleil would have seeped underneath there. But since there's height between the paper and the piece, the light can still go underneath that piece and the whole piece can cure. And on this one right here, before putting the transfer sheet down, the base was slightly painted with an acrylic paint, and the transfer sheet went down to create that kind of, it's almost like a gold leaf look underneath there. This is Becky Nunn with Nunn Design, showing you how you can make epoxy clay pieces with transfer sheet and UV resin over the top to create fabulous pieces like you're seeing here. Thanks for joining us.